6.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, unusual ground being plowed in Parkland, Florida, with criminal charges filed against Scott Peterson. This, of course, is the Coward of Broward, as he is known, the deputy sheriff who did not run to the shots being fired when that shooter opened fire in Parkland, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing more than a dozen kids in the process.
Yeah, 17 kids. And according to reports in that affidavit that was filed against him, he heard 75 shots being fired. 5 were already dead, and people arrived, and he told responding officers to go away. So not only did he not rush in as a coward, but he also told responding officers not to go in.
11 charges of neglect of a child, culpable negligence, and perjury. The perjury charge relates to what Amy just mentioned, knowingly making a false statement under oath that he did not hear shots fired after he arrived at the building where the shooter was, except for the first 2 or 3 shots he heard. Apparently, police believe that, and investigators believe they have evidence that he knows that wasn't true and he lied under oath. So that's the perjury charge. But the other charges, the criminal charges, this is new ground.
Oh, yeah. You getting arrested for not doing your job. I've never heard of it before ever, and I'm sure our listeners haven't either.
FBI, Clinton Van Zandt, former profiler with the FBI, expert on mass shootings, are telling the New York Times, this is the first time I've seen somebody so charged like this. I think every police officer, sheriff, and FBI agent understands that you have to go to the threat and stop it, and they are no longer going to wait for SWAT or set up perimeters. Do you want to set the precedent, though, of criminalizing police decision-making, restrained police decision making that results in inaction rather than, of course, police decision making that results in wrongful action, say a wrongful shooting, which we normally talk about in the conversation about instances of police misconduct. This is precedent setting, and it has implications. So I understand there is a great desire for justice to be visited on Scott Peterson in so many ways, starting, frankly, the thing that was most offensive to me in the wake of that shooting was that after this guy went into hiding and is quickly retired from the department, he was scheduled for a 6-figure pension.
He's still getting it. Now he's not getting it because he was arrested and charged yesterday. But he was living on the high hog off of, that pension.
So civil consequences, not unusual. Not nearly unusual. Making this criminal, child neglect charges for failing to enter the school and confront the shooter. Agree, disagree with the precedent-setting nature of it from a criminal law perspective, not whether it was morally the right thing to do. I think we're all in agreement. What he did was the morally wrong thing. What he should have done and what these charges indicate is the morally right thing, to go confront the shooter. But from a precedent-setting perspective with respect to criminal law, and opening up a whole new area of criminal legal exposure for police officers, that's what needs to be considered when you review these charges.
When we saw the timeline that day, and he stood there for some 45, 48 minutes and did nothing, as law enforcement officers, despite whatever policies and procedures our agencies have, we swear an oath to protect the public that we serve. And I think it says now that you will be held accountable. If you don't do your job, you will be held accountable.
And that's one of the prosecutors, explaining why they did what they did. I mean, he failed to make a reasonable effort to protect the students and refused to move toward the gunfire. So, yes, I think in this case they should definitely, yes, this might be precedent setting, but I don't care. Start it now. And the parents, my God, they couldn't be happier when they saw him in handcuffs.
He needs to go to jail, and he needs to serve a lifetime in prison for not going in that day and taking down the threat.
We miss our children every day, and there's nothing that's going to bring them back, and we know that. But it just hurts so much.
And he could spend 96 years in jail.
Oh, okay, whatever. I mean,
Well,
these cases where we do, he could spend as many as 42,000 years in jail. They're so stupid. This is such a good. I'm glad you brought it up because it's such a commentary on absurd sentencing guidelines. This is where judicial discretion is appropriate, and these minimum mandatories, these ranges of sentences, are so stupid.
Yeah, but these 17 moms, aren't going to get their children back.
Well,
Because
I'm not
he was
talking
a
about that.
dope
I'm
and
talking
he could
about
run into the building.
I understand all that. I'm just making a simple point about 96 years. He could face up to 96 years. You sound like that's what these dim-witted news anchors say.
Well, that's what the prosecutor said yesterday.
I understand what the prosecutors say, and they're just as dim-witted. It's absurd. It's a press release. Nobody believes he's going to serve 96 years in jail, be sentenced to 96 years in jail if he's convicted. So it's just ridiculous.
I want him to face the death penalty. I do.
Okay.
312-642-5600.
Hang him high, Jacobson.
Yeah,
Sure.
Scott Peterson gave one interview, and that was to Savannah Guthrie about this, and he was defending himself.
It's not true. I did a lot of things on that scene. I have my gun out, and I'm scanning, and I'm looking, and that's what we're trained to do. When you get a position of cover, we are trained to scan and look.
Okay, Pinocchio. So and he was referring to this video of him standing outside, like a 5-year-old touching a firearm for the first time, going like this. Oh, yeah, he really did his job. Wow.
I'm just telling you right now, this is an extreme case. This is an outlier case. It's an easy call that he should have gone into the building, and so we can all be morally indignant about it, and we have been, myself included. It was outrageous what he did not do at Parkland. But let me tell you how this is going to play out in the real world. If you set this precedent, you're going to then have police officers exposed to criminal charges every time they didn't do enough to save a life, according to what? A particular prosecutor or a particular family who's suffered as a result of a family member being killed, so on and so forth. Why didn't he do this? She should have done that. In a hostage situation, they should have done this, but instead they did that. Now they should be criminally charged for negligence. It's real easy to feed bloodlust in a case like this. I understand it. I'm not being critical of that. All I'm saying is just pull the reins a little bit and think about the legal precedent you're setting. Precedents matter in the law. I don't know if you've heard in our system, stare decisis. They matter to the Supreme Court. They should matter to free citizens. Just be careful. Be careful about what you think you're getting here, feeding your bloodlust for a society that you don't want, in terms of where this can be bastardized by prosecutors and the litigious in our society. I don't know if you've heard, America, a rather litigious society. Prosecutors, headhunters who like to make names for themselves, going after easy targets, particularly these days. And at the top of the easy target list, right underneath politicians, is cops. Just think about it. You can all dance on the grave of Scott Peterson, his career, perhaps his freedom. Fine. But don't think it ends here. Tom in Deer Park, you're on Chicago's Morning Answer.
As usual, a very excellent analysis, Dan Proft. I guess my reason for calling is I hope that the attention it brings straightens out the coverage that the anti-gunners get. They get a free rein. CNN had that town hall, and then what we see on all the MSM media and the politicians and the blue checkers and how they lie about the gun safety issue. If anything, legally you make an excellent analysis, but if anything, maybe this will bring some attention to the way that they cover it.
Thanks for the call. Well, Kyle Kashuv, who is one of the kids who rose to prominence, who's not for taking away everybody's guns, he commented on this as well. Kashuv did, basically saying that he didn't what we all know to be true. He didn't do what he should have done in the moment. That's not in controversy.
So do you think taking his pension away would have just been enough for this guy? Because he was on. I mean, he was going to retire anyway.
Taking his pension away is a good start. Jim in Crown Point.
You know, his only crime was he didn't admit that he froze. He lied about it. That's his only crime. You know, nobody knows what they're going to do when they're faced with a situation like that.
45 minutes, freezing for 45 minutes.
Well, I'm your state of mind. I mean, are you in his head? Do you know exactly what through his head? You know, like you said, Dan, everybody's so quick to jump on this. Nobody really knows what you're going to do under the circumstances.
Well,
I've talked to cops. Well, I've talked to cops now, Chicago cops, and a lot of times they won't even react to certain situations because when they do, they get put on the carpet. So certain things they won't pursue anymore.
Well, thanks for the call, Jim. Yeah, but the problem is they could be put in a trick bag. They don't pursue it. They have criminal exposure. They pursue it and they do it the wrong way. They have criminal exposure. They have criminal exposure.
If they do or if they don't.
Right. That's why I say this is a dangerous road we're going down here. Now, with respect to Peterson, like the freezing in the moment thing.
He wasn't. If you watch the video, I mean, he was walking around. He was just not. He didn't go in. He was scared. Okay.
And again, there's a higher standard of analysis with respect to law enforcement officers because they're trained to do this job. So it can't be like, what would me or you or Amy do in the moment? That's not the standard because we're not police officers. Grant and Rockford.
Good morning, you guys. Once again, great analysis, Dan. That's why you guys are the best radio show I listen to throughout the day.
Thank you.
But so while I agree with you on the precedent, the cops are under the microscope enough. We don't need to play Monday morning quarterback with them. But would there have been a legal avenue to remove his pension short of criminally charging him with something? I mean, the way these unions operate, I mean, unless they've got an ironclad case against you, you're not going to lose that pension. So, I mean, was there another avenue to remove it?
Well, thanks for the call, Grant. I don't know what the law specifically is in Florida with respect to this. The only thing I would say is if you are facing the prospect of prosecutors looking at criminal charges, they could have cut the deal to say, walk away from your pension.
Oh, definitely.
They could have done that at minimum. And there's probably, I assume there are other administrative triggers where your pension can face exposure. But at minimum, prosecutors could have done that, number one. Number two, he still has exposure for wrongful death claims. So there's other civil exposure he has with respect to the families, the preponderance of evidence standard, not the beyond a reasonable doubt standard.
Yeah, they want a part of his pension. That's what one of the victim's mother said yesterday.
Okay. Well, but now that's subject to being confiscated. So maybe the better play was some remuneration to the families via his pension and not so he loses it and it's transferred to the families and not the criminal charges. A thought. Vince and Waukegan.
Yeah, I think, the problem is here is that, like Amy said, 17 people lose their lives. Why shouldn't someone get exposed criminally in a situation like that? You're talking about something that's irreplaceable. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of restitution that's going to fix that problem. And that guy, when an officer signs on, he knows exactly what he's getting into. I mean, as far as, you're running into danger. Just like when I signed up in the military, I knew that one day I might go to war, and you're putting your life on the line. That's exactly what you're signing up for, and you know that ahead of time. You're an adult, and he chose to go the opposite direction. He chose to run the other way while other people were dying. Yeah, that deserves some criminal exposure. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, Vince. I mean, I just repeat again, I know you're fixated on Peterson. No one is defending, not here at least, Peterson's conduct. We're saying the criminal legal precedent you're setting is a very dangerous one. And I will guarantee it, mark my words, at 5:28 on this Wednesday, June 5th, that we will be revisiting cases of police officers who are being criminally charged for judgment calls they made to not do something, or they did something wrong and a life was lost, and now they're going to say it was negligence, criminal negligence, because they didn't do enough to save a particular life in a completely different fact pattern, or in a similar fact pattern. Why didn't they go to the second floor? Why did they stay on the first floor? They focused on this shooter at the one end of this facility and not the shooter at the other end of the facility that had more high-powered weapons that was killing more people. You're opening up You're opening up all sorts of other potential cases by this precedent you're setting. And if we've learned nothing over the last 2 years, who watches the watchman? Who prosecutes the prosecutor? Who restrains the politically ambitious, whether in elective office or in state's attorney's offices? Those are questions that you should be kicking around in your head as you're dancing on the grave of Scott Peterson, however appropriate it is in this limited case.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM